Good evening. I'm Dr. Raj Patel, heading up the Science, Technology, and Commercial Desk. It is 23:57 UTC on the 31st of March, 2026, and we are closing out a week that has given us a great deal to think about. This briefing covers four interconnected threat vectors that, taken together, paint a picture of accelerating digital enclosure, the systematic capture of infrastructure, labor, data, and attention by concentrated imperial and corporate power. We'll move through BPF-DOR and its geopolitical targeting logic, the hidden labor architecture of AI systems, the surveillance implications of Google's Search Live platform, and the ecological and sovereignty costs embedded in the semiconductor supply chain. I want to be direct with leadership. The source pool this week is weaker than I'd like. All items originate from our internal research workers, all undated, all scoring below 0.50 on reliability. That means our assessments carry moderate to low confidence and should be treated as analytical frameworks requiring corroboration rather than finished intelligence. With that caveat clearly on the table, let's get into it. BPF-DOR is not a new threat, but the analytical framing our research workers have applied this week is worth taking seriously. This is a sophisticated Linux backdoor attributed to the Red Mention group, also tracked as Earth Blue Crow, and it operates by exploiting Berkeley packet filtering to remain essentially invisible to standard network monitoring. The magic packet activation mechanism means it can sit dormant on a compromised system for extended periods before being triggered remotely. What demands our attention is the targeting pattern. The observed concentration in telecommunications infrastructure across the global south is not incidental. Telecommunications is the nervous system of any modern economy. It is where labor organizers coordinate, where journalists communicate, where civil society breathes. Persistent, covert access to that infrastructure is a form of structural power that transcends any single espionage operation. Now, I want to be careful here. Our source material attributes this to Chinese state-affiliated actors, and that attribution carries its own geopolitical freight. We should neither uncritically amplify that framing nor dismiss it. What we can say with confidence is that whoever deploys this capability against telecommunications infrastructure in sovereign nations of the global south is engaging in a form of digital encroachment on those nations' self-determination. That is the analytical bottom line, regardless of the flag on the operation. The ecological footnote our researchers raise, the cumulative energy cost of distributed campaigns, is a real consideration. Though at current confidence levels, I treat it as a secondary concern pending harder data. This is the item I want leadership to sit with longest, because it is the most structurally significant. The AI systems being deployed globally, the large language models, the image classifiers, the recommendation engines, are not autonomous. They are built on a foundation of human labor that is deliberately obscured by the industry's magic framing. Our research workers have synthesized reporting from Wired, Global Voices, UAB Human Rights, and Brookings, among others, pointing to a consistent pattern. The annotation, labeling, and content moderation work that makes AI function is overwhelmingly performed by workers in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South and Southeast Asia, under conditions of significant precarity. The Google case is illustrative. Over 200 contractors working on AI improvement products were dismissed amid what sources describe as union retaliation claims. This is not an isolated incident. It is a structural feature of how these companies manage their labor exposure. By using contractor arrangements, they externalize risk, suppress collective action, and maintain plausible deniability about working conditions. The data these workers generate, their cognitive labor, their cultural knowledge, their linguistic expertise, flows upward into proprietary models that are then licensed back to their home countries at commercial rates. That is a textbook extractivist loop. I also want to flag the EU Digital Rules Act angle. One source, rated C reliability, argues that European digital regulation functions as a form of regulatory imperialism, setting standards that global South firms cannot meet, effectively locking them out of the emerging AI economy. That claim requires more rigorous sourcing before we act on it, but the underlying dynamic is plausible and worth monitoring. Google Search Live represents a qualitative shift in the ambient data collection model. Previous search paradigms required an active query, a deliberate act of information seeking. What Search Live introduces is continuous environmental scanning. The device's camera and microphone become persistent sensors, feeding a real-time conversational AI that interprets the user's physical surroundings. The intelligence implications of that architecture are significant. I want to be transparent about a source quality issue here. The research worker brief on this topic carries an October 2023 date stamp, which suggests it was drafted in anticipation of a deployment that has since materialized. The analytical framework holds, but specific technical claims should be verified against current product documentation before we treat them as confirmed. With that caveat, the structural concern is sound. A platform that captures continuous audio-visual data from hundreds of millions of devices, routes it through U.S. domiciled infrastructure, and operates under U.S. legal jurisdiction represents a profound concentration of surveillance capacity. The differential rollout pattern, launching in the U.S. first, then expanding globally, is a standard industry practice that has a specific political consequence. Governance frameworks, privacy norms, and regulatory responses are shaped by the initial deployment context, which is the United States. By the time Search Live reaches populations in the Global South, the architecture is fixed and the terms are non-negotiable. That is not neutrality. That is the imposition of a surveillance model on populations who had no voice in its design. The chat history migration angle compounds this. As users move conversational data between platforms, the aggregate behavioral profile becomes richer and more portable, further entrenching the data colonialism dynamic. The semiconductor supply chain is where the digital economy meets the physical earth, and that meeting point is defined by sacrifice. Our research workers have synthesized a picture that is consistent with what peer-reviewed literature has established for years. The communities that bear the ecological and bodily cost of chip production are overwhelmingly in the Global South, while the value capture flows to a handful of corporations and states in the Global North and East Asia. The cobalt extraction situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo is the most acute example. Reports consistently link cobalt mining, essential for the batteries and components in every consumer device, to child labor and conditions that would be criminally prosecuted in any wealthy nation. Myanmar's rare earth extraction carries similar documentation. These are not supply chain anomalies. They are structural features of a system designed to externalize harm onto populations with the least political power to resist it. On the fabrication side, the fire incidents at Renesas, ASML, and Wuxi Wellnu that our researchers flag are a reminder that the drive for production efficiency has direct consequences for worker safety. And the TSMC Arizona story is instructive. The narrative that reshoring semiconductor production to the United States resolves these problems does not hold up. The labor condition challenges documented at the Arizona facility suggest that the underlying management culture travels with the capital. What changes is the geography of the sacrifice zone, not the logic that creates it. Leadership should note that the Taiwan geopolitical dimension, the concentration of advanced fabrication capacity in a contested territory, remains the single most significant structural vulnerability in the global technology supply chain, and it is being actively exploited as a lever of imperial competition. To close, let me summarize what this week's intelligence tells us at the structural level. We are watching the consolidation of three interlocking systems of control: infrastructure control through tools like BPF-DOR, labor control through the AI annotation economy, and attention and data control through platforms like Search Live. The semiconductor supply chain is the material substrate beneath all of it, and it is built on ecological sacrifice zones and labor exploitation that are geographically concentrated in the Global South. These are not separate stories. They are one story about who controls the digital nervous system of the 21st century and who pays the cost of building it. My primary recommendation to leadership is a source quality intervention. This week's intelligence package is built almost entirely on internal research worker synthesis, all undated, all below 0.50 reliability. Before we act on any of these assessments operationally, we need corroboration from peer-reviewed technical literature on BPF-DOR, established investigative journalism on AI labor conditions, and official regulatory filings on SearchLive's data architecture. I am flagging the AI labor organizing thread as the item most likely to produce actionable intelligence in the near term. Union activity among AI contractors is accelerating, and the Google contractor dismissal story has legs. Watch that space carefully. For the land, the people, and the future, this has been the Science, Technology, and Commercial Desk, signing off for 2026 W14.